Marcus Cohen Show.
Welcome, everybody. You are in the right place at the right time, exactly where you're meant to be. Coming to you free from all time constructs, this is a quantum message, and we've been waiting for you. This is the Marcus Cohen Show.
Welcome to the Marcus Cohen Show.
Today on the show, we are lucky to have a very special guest. He's been an agent of the Defense Intelligence Agency for over a decade, otherwise known as the DIA. He's an expert engineer in networking technology and future technologies. For the last several years, he's been involved in a live-action military operation where his skills have been deployed to infiltrate places such as major data centers, hotel chains, military bases, and even top-secret giant warehouses filled with tens of millions of classified documents. As you can probably imagine, being in this line of work, this man has been jumped, robbed, kidnapped, poisoned, beaten, and even escaped assassination attempts on his very own life. Some would call him the real-life 007. I just call him Q. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 17. Please give a warm welcome to the ever-interesting and perspicacious Austin Steinbart. Austin, thank you for being here.
Hey, Marcus, good to be here.
All right. Happy 4th of July.
Thank you, sir. You as well?
Yeah. All right. Well, we have a great episode planned for everyone. So, for those that don't know, the DIA is the Defense Intelligence Agency that was formed in 1961 under the John F. Kennedy administration and specializes in military intelligence and consisted of about 17,000 people. Now, you're an agent, not on the payroll, and you get a lot of flack for that. So you want to explain what the difference is?
Yep, that is true. So I am not an official member of the DIA. I am an unofficial subcontractor. So I've been doing that since I was in high school. And kind of what that means is that I didn't go to the traditional boot camp or come through, have the traditional rank. It works more kind of like a confidential informant. Okay. I always like to joke that I'm a DIA agent in a similar manner to which El Chapo is a CIA agent.
Okay.
Right, so they have me do things that they cannot be seen to be doing.
Okay. And you were pretty much inducted, if you will, into the DIA at age 17 as well.
That is correct.
That's when you discovered that there was a protest outside your school, an immigration protest, and you recognized that it was some sort of operation.
Yep. So there was just a major, in 2006, I want to say, there was a major immigration protest outside my school. And kids from all over the district, thousands of kids, started rioting outside my school. So as the rambunctious young man that I was, I decided to go out there, not necessarily because I was down for the cause, just because I wanted to get out of school and see what was up. And so I saw some very interesting stuff, kind of realized that this is being organized, we're all being put up to this by some older people that didn't really go to our school. So that was kind of my first, I guess, little test, you might say. And then I was kind of a knucklehead in high school, so I had fake ID, I sold alcohol, I did a bunch of, hackerish things, and that was kind of the basis, I think, of them having me in this role.
Okay, so you kind of fit right in there. And you went to Cuba twice, is that right?
Before
it was legal for Americans to go.
I did. So I tagged along with a missionary group. I pitched myself to them. I was like, hey, I'm going to be the sports minister.
Okay.
And I brought a deflated soccer ball, a football, and a basketball in my bag. And I pretty much just walked around in the streets in Cuba and picked it up with people. And then they would come in and preach after the fact.
Excellent.
And it was a nice little symbiotic relationship there.
And one of the people that you were working with in IT is now the president of Cuba, is that right?
That's right. So on one of my trips, I went to Santa Clara, which is more in the central part of the country, maybe like an hour and a half drive from Havana. And one of the guys I ended up meeting was the guy who ran the 56K satellite uplink satellites for the communist government.
Wow.
So he was an interesting guy. He was about my age at the time.
Super fast internet.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild, to come from the United States and just see what they were working with over there. And he was one of the rare Cubans. He had a Facebook in 2008, so that was a pretty unusual situation for a Cuban to be in. We bonded over the fact that we use the same proxies and cyber mechanisms to bypass our firewall. So me, for my like high school and for the places that I would go, that wouldn't allow you to access the open internet. For him, it was just to see Facebook, see the world from Cuba.
All
Because
right.
that's not really something that you're allowed to do there. You know, the internet's very tightly controlled. So
Right.
and most of the people, you know, didn't even have a TV or a cell phone, let alone internet. So
Right.
it was a really wild experience for me. It was kind of like stepping into a time machine, going back and
Hearing that dial-up tone.
yeah.
Cool, cool. And so you got into you come from a military family. Your mom, your grandmother is part of the Spanish throne bloodline.
Yep. So my grandfather was a Marine and later worked for the refueling contractor, the private refueling contractor that did the refueling on the Yuma MCAS base. So the base down on the border of Arizona that they used to train military pilots, so Navy and Air Force. There's bombing big quarantined areas of desert where they just drop bombs and.
Okay, and the name of that company was at the Mercury Rising.
Yeah,
Inc?
it was called Mercury Refueling Inc.
Fueling Inc. Okay.
Yep. And
All right.
that just happened to be one of the companies that smuggled a lot of drugs for the CIA.
Wow.
It's a good, nice little access point there.
Right, and so that means that you had your grandpa had a house that was a CIA drop house, and when you were younger, you played in the trap doors and throughout the house. That must have been pretty fun.
Yeah, you know, at the time you didn't realize that was even the case. It just seemed kind of like a fun toy, but looking back
Sounds
on it,
awesome.
knowing what I know now, I was like, wow, that surprised more people weren't suspicious about those little trap doors.
Right, right.
And then they had just this really big property with this like 30-foot oleander bush wall. So it was on the back of their property. There was a canal behind there. And each property had these big bush walls, so you could walk along in their neighborhood along the canal behind, like in between all the properties, and it was so covered that you couldn't really be seen. So it was a good spot for people to come, give him drops that were going on planes, going across the United States.
Excellent, excellent. And your passion was actually to become an Air Force pilot. Is that right?
That's true.
It kind of got derailed last minute.
I did. I wanted to be a fighter pilot for most of my life. I grew up, since he had so much access to the base, one of my favorite things to do as a kid was he would take us to the end of the runway and we'd sit in the back of his truck and watch fighter jets take off overhead. So
That's awesome.
Always loved fighter jets. And
who doesn't love fighter jets?
Yeah, wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. So I went through all that rigmarole as far as like you had to get really good grades. You had to go through... write a bunch of essays, had to network with a bunch of military people, and then you had to go through I want to say it was a 4 or 5 step interview process that started off kind of with just a normal recruiter and ended up with a couple generals and a congressperson. Wow. So I got nominated by Congressman John Carter, who was just the congressman in my district of the school I went to in Texas at the time. And I got one of 2 spots, and I was selected out of 200 people. So I was pretty proud about that, and kind of just was operating on the assumption that was going to happen until about a month and a half before I was supposed to leave for basic training. They called me back, and they were like, "Oh, by the way, you have celiac disease, which is like a gluten allergy,
right?
You know, just a pretty mild thing." And they're like, "So you're undeployable. So we can't pack you a spare lunch if you're off in Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever. Wow. So you gotta do something else."
They cut you from that. That probably was devastating, huh?
It was disappointing, but I ended up going I would say not 180 degrees the opposite direction, but I ended up going back to my hometown in Arizona and going to Arizona State University.
Okay.
And had a good time out there. Took a different direction, but it gave me the opportunity to do what I'm doing now and kind of led me into a lot of the things that I guess I was needed for. So
Right. Yeah, the universe had bigger plans for you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So what you did after that, then you were an IT guy, and part of the live action military operation was to gather data from certain hotel chains and collect information.
That's correct. So I started off in point of sale. So point of sale is like the computer, like the touchscreen computer cash registers for retailers and
Restaurants,
restaurants, and that tallies, all the sales, all the inventory, the employee hours, all that kind of stuff. And it was a really great tool for catching money laundering, right? So I had a bunch of my customers ended up being money laundering ops for the cartel. So it was just really easy to tell whenever you do the point of sale system. You can see exactly what's happening.
Right.
And it really showed me that line of work, just kind of like how out in the open a lot of this cartel activity in the United States was, just how brazen they were, how they openly talked about it, over phones, texts, emails, and just kind of showed me how untouchable they are and how this is really a problem that our government makes no effort to police whatsoever.
Well, why do you think they have that level of arrogance?
I think it's just, they know that they're made men, right? This is their turf. You make a deal with the CIA as long as you stay in your turf, you drive in your lane, you don't, you pay the man, you pretty much get free ride.
Okay. So pretty much almost everything we see in movies is real, and almost everything we see on TV is fake.
Lots of stuff that seems like it should only be in movies is in fact real. A great movie I like to throw out there, great example of some of the stuff that I've personally been witness to is that movie Lord of War, where just
Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, they used Soviet arms after the fall of the Soviet Union, and the CIA just kind of like bribed the generals and sold that stuff all over the world.
Right. Right. There was another one too, where I think it was Tom Cruise, where he had the plane, the CIA plane. Then he got in trouble, and at the time Clinton was the governor of Arkansas, and they let him off the hook.
Yep. So that was
really
a
happened.
Great movie detailing the CIA drug running op, where they would use drug financed weapons to enact their regime change ends in Central America. That's how the Clintons kind of rose to power, is because they were governor at the time that was all going on. So they had to, on the DL, approve of that.
Okay. This first segment, I wanted to, some people that had never heard of you before to understand how you became an agent of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and we kind of went over that a lot. Is there anything else you'd want to let anyone know about kind of your background and where you come from, or who you are, just as Austin Steinbart, as the good person that the Q crew has, all been around you and knows?
Yeah, so I think I got kind of triangulated into this. I had the grandpa on one side that was doing the drug smuggling for the CIA.
Right.
And the big time drug smuggling, right? That's what they did at that military base, not the baby stuff.
Right.
Then my grandmother, his wife, was a Spanish bloodline descendant to the throne. Her maiden name was Aragon.
Okay.
So that is important for accomplishing some of the ends of the QAnon mission.
Right.
Where we were trying to unwind the claim from the Treaty of Tordesillas, because we got a lot of hostile foreign adversaries using that to abuse us, and so that's one of the things we were unwinding with this QAnon mission. So that's on my mom's side. On my dad's side, my grandfather, he was actually brought to the United States as part of Operation Paperclip. He was a tank commander, an SS officer.
Okay.
And he was given a false identity and smuggled out of Russia. He was fought on the Eastern Front on a Red Cross train. So he had gotten wounded in the war, and the treatments he got for all the bandages and casts was what allowed him to cover up his SS tattoos and get out of there, because they were just killing anybody that had those on the spot.
Wow.
So he was evacuated out of there by this British intelligence front called Red Cross.
And that was part of Project Paperclip they were brought in.
That is correct.
A lot of those guys went to, they were like rocket engineers. They helped form NASA and get that kind of launch off the ground. But you said he was involved in the Red Cross front.
Yeah, so he was brought over here by the Red Cross, and then he worked as a mason for his whole life. So he wasn't much involved in the defense industry, and my dad ended up being really good with
Okay.
math and science and all that. And my dad worked for his whole career in the defense industry, specifically the semiconducting aspect of the defense industry. So selling software and tools to design the chips and computer components that go inside bombs, missiles, avionic sensors, things of that nature. So his job for most of my life, he was the primary supplier to Raytheon for selling them it was kind of like an AutoCAD software that they used to design their chips. So he was deeply involved in that world, and that his involvement with that, because I would just always see whatever the latest greatest thing Raytheon was having.
Right.
It was what allowed me to recognize so quickly when I saw all these tow missiles, sophisticated laser-guided anti-tank weapons that cost about $2.5 million a shot.
Wow.
When ISIS had them over in Syria. So it was pretty wild to see that. Just
they
these
suddenly
ragtag terrorists in the desert just magically have $500 million worth of missiles.
Right. There were some rumors about that one of the last administrations helped get them those missiles, those weapons.
That is true, and those aren't just rumors. Those are facts substantiated by emails in WikiLeaks, indisputably authentic emails. And that actually wasn't in the release of like the Clinton emails, the Podesta emails, and the DNC emails that are kind of the primary focus of the 2016 election. That was in a drop around 2012 that apparently got overlooked by a lot of people.
Well, a lot of WikiLeaks is overlooked. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you could tell us about Julian Assange or what his status is currently?
Well, he's still in a pretty precarious situation
At the embassy, right?
Well, no, he's in that Belmarsh prison. They took him out of that embassy.
That's right. Yeah, they
evicted him.
transferred him. Yeah.
So he's been rotting in prison and fighting an extradition order to the United States. But he's a huge hero and patriot, but like a patriot like to humanity, exposing all kinds of crazy corruption.
Yeah, absolutely.
Across the entire world. Even on Russia, they always claim that he's a Russian agent, but
right.
He's done drops on the Russian government that were really damaging as well. So.
Right, he's an equal opportunity government.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's going to be one of the big prerogatives of this as well, is to get him out of there and to kind of explain the veracity of his material and kind of why he's such a target.
Okay, and do you think our current president Trump has he's been holding off on bringing Assange back and just clearing him he's kind of holding something back?
I think he's caught up in this political pressure. So this is one of the insidious aims of the Russia hoax investigation, was to make it impossible for Trump to be kind of like beating the drum about that stuff. So obviously they falsely accused WikiLeaks of getting their information from Russia. The administration, just kind of with this looming over their head, I guess optically, politically, would look really bad.
Right.
If he was to just kind of like waive the charges, bring this guy in, give him the hero's welcome that he's deserved. But that's just going to be one of the things we got to do, right? Is explain how that wasn't Russian. It wasn't Russia hacking that. That was indisputably authentic emails. It was a guy named Seth Rich that had leaked the DNC and the Hillary Clinton emails around the time of the election. Kind of just, I would say, paving the public opinion groundwork, the public opinion pathway for President Trump to be bring in somebody like Julian Assange into the fray, being able to
unable to say anything.
Yeah, he's just got a bunch of bureaucrats at the corrupt FBI right now and the corrupt Justice Department that are still trying to railroad Julian Assange as hard as they can. So we just got to get the word out there. We got to use the contents of the Amorphous archive. For those of you who don't know, there's just a archive that I curated a bunch of the most damning emails out of there, like kind of the juiciest bits of that. And I labeled them with the numbers so that they're easy to look up. When I got in my current situation with the FBI, we got those subpoenaed into the court record. So just getting out there and kind of explaining what's in there, right? Because it's extremely damning pretty much from every angle. Whether you want to talk about public corruption, whether you want to talk about election rigging, whether you want to talk about racial and gender incitement, whether you want to talk about war crimes, about CIA spying on Americans, it's all there. So really just trying to give people a taste of the veracity of the material in those WikiLeaks.
Is that amorphous archive available for anyone to look up to see those selected emails that you've chosen?
Yes, it's out there. We actually are getting a site up right now, Steinbart.media, where that'll be available.
Excellent.
Sometime very soon. We're just going to put another copy up there.
All right.
For everybody who hasn't been able to see that yet.
Looking forward to it. Yeah, it's a lot of information to go through. With that, we're going to take a 3-minute break, and it'll talk about a little bit of what we're working on for to go through that information. So we'll be right back.
We are anonymous, and we have an important message for the people of Earth.
Okay, look. I'm no longer anonymous. I'm DJ, and I'm just one of many digital soldiers who have woken up from the Matrix.
We have an army of digital soldiers.
As Q says, enjoy the show. Those of us on Q Team realize that we are a part of the show, and our scene is coming up, so we better get ready. Now, who's part of Q Team? Well, if you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, all right. Congratulations, you are a part of Q Team. On the other hand, if you're at home watching this thinking, what the f***? Well, then all I can say to you is enjoy the show. Our enemies have mostly been neutralized already. However, they still control the media, and therefore they control the narrative and the hearts and minds of the people. The mission now is to first inform ourselves, and then inform those we care about, to slowly spread the Great Awakening.
The journalists that we have in our media did a disservice to themselves, actually more than they did to this country. They did a disservice to themselves because they displayed an arrogance that is unprecedented. And so the American people decided to take over the idea of information.
And fellow patriots have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to build the tools that you need to help awaken yourself and those you care about. We are conducting our own research and creating our own media, truly of the people, by the people, and for the people.
We have what we call citizen journalists.
However, the next phase, and what will really dethrone the mainstream media and the CIA, FBI, the whole cabal, is Phoenix Vault. The question is, are you prepared to open the Phoenix Vault?
You're listening to The Marcus Cohen Show.
Well, welcome back, everybody. That was a message from PhoenixVault.org, a project that is being developed and about to be unleashed onto the public. Our guest today is patriot and advocate for freedom for all of humanity, Austin Steinbart. Austin, great to have you here.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. So the Q in the QAnon operation stands for quantum?
It does. So it's kind of like a little play on words there. The quantum computers, they use qubits instead of bits. So instead of qubit, it's like QAnon.
Right. And so you were talking about your dad that worked with the chips in Raytheon. So regular computers use electricity and silicon.
Correct. And quantum computers use graphene and lasers. Completely different type of computing. A total paradigm shift, you might say.
A total paradigm shift, yeah. So, these quantum computers, they have to be placed in oil-like drums and kept at levels that are sub-zero, really or close to resemble space. Is that correct?
Yep. So it's a cryogenic vacuum freezer. So it kind of looks like an oil drum barrel that just goes over it, and it sucks all the air out, and it makes it very, very cold. And matter reacts differently when it's near that absolute zero and those conditions of deep space.
Okay.
And that's what allows the quantum state to be achieved.
Okay. So now you mentioned that Google has a quantum computer, 72 qubits. Now that I remember you saying that was 16 sextillion is the number for that.
Yep. So the
72.
way to think about it is the number. So it could be in simultaneous states, right? It can be a 0 or 1 or both. And the number of simultaneous states a quantum computer can be in, or the number of options it can kind of consider at the same time, is 2 to the number of qubits power. So like if it was a 1 qubit computer, it'd have 2 options at the same time. If it was a 2 qubit computer, it'd have 4 options that it could look at the same time. And if it was a 3 qubit computer, it'd have 8, and so on and so forth, to kind of get to this unimaginably huge number. And so 72, right? Google's 72 qubit quantum computer is 2 to the 72nd power number of simultaneous states that it can consider at the same time. So that is 16 sextillion options at one time. And so that's, just to put that in perspective, it goes million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion.
Okay.
So it's quite a large number, and it's how Google's quantum computer can take a optimization problem that would take every other supercomputer on Earth right now combined. It would take them, 400,000 years to solve.
Wow.
And they can take that problem and solve it in 3 minutes.
Unbelievable.
So it just kind of shows you the power, the vastness of the power of these quantum computers, what we're dealing with.
Okay.
Now. We're just barely scratching the surface of.
And so why isn't it infinite? Why is it a number that's capped, for example, at sextillion?
Oh, well, it's not capped. So, next year, there'll be, maybe not a 72 qubit quantum computer, maybe there'll be an 80. And
so
then
it'll
maybe
continue to progress.
So it will continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. We're
using
kind of
that new
at
technology.
the ground floor of the quantum computing industry, and it's just going to rapidly pick up pace from here. Kind of like how computers did back in the day.
So this leads to quantum computing, quantum internet. Now, quantum internet is some mind-bending technology, right? You're able to do some pretty insane things.
Yep. So if you tie a bunch of quantum computers together, for lack of a better way to describe it, you get this thing called the quantum internet. And the quantum internet is a pretty mind-boggling thing. It allows instantaneous communications with 0 latency, not just from here and anywhere on Earth, but you could do it as far as you want. So if someone else has access to quantum internet, we could facilitate 0 latency communications with a planet, say 100 million light years away.
In zero lag, zero
Yep.
latency, zero lag. So that's kind of what they did in the movie Avatar and Stargate Universe, where they controlled humanoid avatars via a computer with 0 lag.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Yep. And then it's also interdimensional, and when you throw that word out there, a lot of times it sounds a little bit woo-woo.
Spooky.
Yep. But the wild part about this quantum internet is it can essentially warp time, for lack of a better, not getting too much of the technical details. Using the quantum internet, we could post to forums in the present.
Okay.
Right. So that's kind of how this Operation QAnon has been facilitated. It's how we've been skirting the laws regarding classified information and leaking on operations in progress and targeting elements of your own government. Is we have Q plus in the future posting to the boards in the present.
Okay.
So it's pretty wild, pretty out there concept, but we're just trying to get out here and explain it. And for anybody who's interested, on my YouTube channel, just my name, Austin Steinbart, I have a playlist kind of discussing some of the more scientific, like technical, granular details of that.
Okay.
Just in case anybody's interested in learning more. Obviously, saying that kind of stuff, it sounds pretty out there, but it's a totally real thing. And you can check out the science on my channel if you guys want.
Okay. All right. And so that's a lot of how some of those those deltas were happening on the Q boards. It was through that quantum internet interface that was able to look back or forward and post everything in order.
Yep, and it's kind of how they got some of the zero deltas so tight, right? Because even if you're planning that out way in advance, you really can't control exactly, every millisecond that you're going to lag here or there. There's just too many factors. So the only way you can really get things that tight is by using the quantum internet. Right.
Very interesting. And a lot of people think that, it's just nonsense.
That is true. A lot of people do think that our movement is just full of a bunch of nonsense right now, which is why I'm coming out and just trying to kind of provide some more tangible details kind of put a name, a face, like how we got here. What is the big picture? Just because we're trying to drag our movement out of the fringes and more into the mainstream.
Okay.
And we really feel like it's going to be something that can unite the country, right? Not just be a right-wing thing, but be a left-wing thing and an independent thing too. If we just explain it right, the QAnon movement really targets things like government corruption, right? Money in politics. It talks about, just a demonstration of how corrupt the CIA is, and how it's not just that they're, dangerously incompetent, it's that they're like actively malicious. The FBI, right? The FBI will take false information from the CIA and use it to open these crazy investigations, right, into treason, essentially, right, investigating our president, acting like he's a Manchurian candidate.
Right.
So just showing, organizations like the CIA, like the FBI are corrupt, that the wars are a big racket, that it's not just bad decisions being made, it's actively malicious ones, made for extremely flimsy reasons that really don't serve the interests of the American population at large.
Right.
So there's a lot of big picture themes in the Q movement that we feel very strongly that the lefties could get on board with us as well. And so we're just trying to come out here, show them that we're not these, crazy, rabid, like right-wing extremists, and that we want a lot of the same things they do,
Sure, yeah. And I think the left, a lot of people on both sides, both know that there's corruption. In fact, that was that was the whole left side. That was their angle for a while. They were, against corruption, and they should still be against corruption, but they're acting like they're not.
Yeah, they got a little triggered by Donald Trump. I think he might have broken their brains a little bit, because all of a sudden they forgot that they're anti-war. If Trump wants to leave the war, they're pro-war now.
Right.
If Trump's anti-FBI, they're pro-FBI, right? So they just they got to calm down a little bit, take a breath, come back down to earth, and realize that, a lot of these organizations and a lot of these underhanded techniques that they're using against Donald Trump right now have been methods that they've used against lefty political movements since forever, especially in the 60s.
Right, with
against
JFK.
people like, JFK, like Martin Luther King Jr., like Malcolm X, right? That's all FBI and CIA.
And that's just
doing
America.
stuff
There were some other, world leaders or people back then also in the world. Yeah.
So we're just trying to calmly explain this to them in a way they can understand, and so that they can see that maybe Donald Trump isn't the Nazi, is the orange Hitler that they're kind of trying to make him out to be.
Sure.
It's been kind of a weird situation, right? Because that started out as like this very hyperbolistic statement, and they just repeated it so many times that they kind of got, started drinking their own Kool-Aid, and they started acting as if that was in any way, shape, form, or fashion even remotely true, right?
Right.
So it's pretty silly, just because it's like, do you guys think that if he was actually Hitler, you'd be able to stand in the streets and jeer about him? Do you think you'd be able to make these big silly blimps?
Right.
You think you'd be able to just like insult him 24/7 on every single TV station? I would venture to guess you would not, right? I'd venture to guess that Hitler would probably kill you if you did that.
Be a little worse, worse than Trump. Yeah.
So hopefully they can get a grip a little bit, take a breath, and we can kind of try to recontextualize this situation that they've been so far led astray by our mainstream media.
Right. And I think Trump alluded to that when he said the media is the enemy of the people. A lot of people, he said the fake media is the enemy of the people. And a lot of people misconstrued that. And they just said, oh, that's anti-American because, we have the freedom of press. But that's part of the problem is a lot of people aren't informed or educated because what they're, bombarded with all day, not only in news media, but pop culture and social media, it's all pretty much anti-Trump.
That is true. And even not just in the anti-Trump stuff, right? They're the enemy of the people for many more reasons than that.
Sure.
They're the enemy of the people for letting the Bush administration lie us into the Iraq war and never really asking serious questions, never really pushing back. They're the enemy of the people for letting Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton destroy Libya, the most prosperous country in all of Africa, and essentially turn them, set them back 100 years. They have open air slave markets and a bunch of bad stuff going on there now.
It's not good.
Insane refugee flows going across the Mediterranean. They didn't push back in Syria when we had these preposterously false chemical weapons attacks, supposedly done by Bashar al-Assad and his own people.
Right.
So we just, they carry water for the people that they're told to carry water for, right? They're going to say whatever they're told to say. And it's gotten to the point of where they're so corrupt that they are a threat to all of our national security. So it is not hyperbole to say they are the enemy of the people.
Enemy of the people, yeah. And regarding Libya, we came, we conquered, he died. I think that was a quote from...
Callous joking about death on the part of Team Clinton, that's for sure.
Yep.
And one of the interesting things, the Amorphous Archive, one of my favorite quotes about that was one of our operatives out in the field, Sydney Blumenthal, was writing her classified briefings back and forth. And they, in one of my favorite clips, they specifically talk about, Obama's looking pretty weak on Libya. We got to do something to shore up the polls. And then they talk about the direct quote, the humanitarian motive offered is limited. Read the polls, win the war, no way out. So it's just this like demonstration in, a couple paragraphs worth of material of how our leaders are predicating the decision to go to war, to destroy countries, not on American interests, right? Not on even that we just want to go steal their oil. The only reason they destroyed Libya was so that Obama and Hillary could look tougher in the polls and win the re-election.
Wow.
So it's just like the height of cynicism and evil right there.
Yeah, it's very evil.
And it's all really, encompassed in a single email. Just when you see these email clips, you really see just the degree to which they have not ever experienced oversight. Because just the things they say, like nobody
just
that ever had any sort of worry about, getting caught for doing illegal things or getting exposed as like the most evil, unethical people on earth. They would never write things like that, right? It was just absolutely incredible, the things they said in their own words in those emails.
Yeah, and what's even more incredible is that is now public because of WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, and no one seems to care. I mean, it's been, like you said, since many, many years, and the media's not doing the job. Even people on the right aren't doing, like, no one's talking about all this very juicy material that would completely shatter. It would, they're all protected.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. About a year ago, I was pretending I was running for Congress, just trying to like make the rounds and get the lay of the land here in Arizona for some operations we were trying to do. And it was amazing to me how many prominent members of the party had never seen any of those emails whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So it's like the holy grail of like, it's a nuclear Armageddon mountain worth of blackmail on Democrats.
Right, just laid out.
That they could easily use to win the election, but they don't. And I think part of the reason is because it implicates some of their own, like people like Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, John McCain. Mm-hmm. I think the other reason is that they just are operating under this preposterously false assumption that those might be tainted by Russian intelligence in some way. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty incredible little psyop that they pulled off there with that Russiagate investigation by just getting people not to even talk about it, right? They never, even though they said that Russia stole the emails, they never ever claimed that the emails weren't authentic, right? So
that's true.
So they never even denied that, and yet pretty much the entire Republican Party for some reason just doesn't feel that they want to use that material in any kind of serious way. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to do here. Shake a lot of these old dinosaurs awake and realize like, hey, this is very serious stuff. This is like, rock our country to its core veracity material. Mm-hmm. And we need to talk about it, right? It's out there. They try to pretend that if you are like Julian Assange and you're putting classified information out there, or if you're like me and you're promoting it, that you're somehow acting as like an agent of a hostile foreign power. You're somehow like hurting the United States.
They're killing the messenger.
And and the ridiculous part of that is like that is a boatload of information on, behind the scenes of American politics, behind the scenes of foreign policy, right? Because Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and that's who oversees the CIA. So her emails were full of all kinds of crazy stuff. And they act like, you're unpatriotic or you're threatening our national security if you put that out there or promote that. But the truth is, every hostile foreign intelligence agency on Earth now has that. So if we don't now adjust, right, if we don't now come up with a new playbook to conduct our foreign policy, to run our politics as normal, then we're headed for disaster, right? Because every one of our enemies has every single bit of that stuff. So we're the only ones that as the American population, really, that has been kind of putting our heads in the sand and pretending that it's not a thing when it is.
Right.
And it's being actively used against us by, foreign adversaries. So it might as well be used by the American people to, enact some of these changes, these sweeping changes that we are dramatically in need of.
Sure. And I think that was Trump's actually he talked about that, when he was running in 2016, trying to drain the swamp. And he kind of hinted that he knew a lot about the corruption. And on the Seth Rich and DNC hacks, it was proven, I believe, forensically, that the speed at which the files were transferred were too fast to be done remotely. So they know it was an inside attack, meaning someone just had a USB drive and stole the emails from within the building, and they were able to prove that. Is that right?
That is correct. There is indisputable cyber forensic evidence that clearly lays out how those emails were copied to a flash drive and hand carried out of the building by a leaker, not hacked.
And that one fact completely debunks the whole Russia Gate theory alone.
That fact does debunk it, and there's obviously many more that debunk it as well. But that's definitely like one
that's
of the
a big
headlining blockbusters.
Yeah, that's
like,
a big
hello.
one. All right. Well, that's pretty interesting. So we're gonna take a 90-second break, and we'll be right back.
Because the faster we can wrap up this nightmare circus, the faster we can get on to the business of unveiling the Space Force. Cha-cha-cha.
You're listening to The Marcus Cohen Show.
Well, welcome back. If you're just joining us, our guest today is International Man of Mystery and the future Space Force Commander of the United States, Austin Steinbart. I know that comment is probably going to trigger a lot of people that follow the Q movement, calling you the future Space Force Commander. Now, first of all, I just want to say I'm personally excited about the announcement of the Space Force because, I love space personally. And in reality, I think space age technology and operations have been unofficially around for decades. And so I thought it was pretty interesting when Trump rolled that out. And I think a lot of people that were suspicious of that kind of knew that that was the beginning of letting a lot of this new technology out, including the quantum internet that's being built out and the quantum computers. And as you stated on one of your videos on your YouTube channel, that SpaceX has actually been a DIA front for the Space Force for many years now.
That is correct. So we've been getting, space is a very important domain for maintaining our military supremacy into the future. And we've just been getting, shaken down and scammed by defense contractors since forever. So SpaceX is really a mission to bring down the costs, right? To undercut these defense contractors, to get to space,
privatize it
for a reasonable price. Yep.
Right. Okay. And is Space Command and Cyber Command going to be absorbed into the Space Force? Is that right?
Yes. So we are in the process of laying the groundwork to be pulling the Space Force out of the Air Force.
Okay.
Right now, it works kind of like the Marines and the Navy, where the Marines are part of the Department of the Navy and kind of overseen by them. And so the Space Force is part of the Department of the Air Force, kind of overseen by them. And what we want to do is pull that out of the Air Force and establish that as its own independent agency.
And eventually NASA and the FAA will be completely disbanded and dismantled.
That is correct. Okay. So with the new Space Force,
and why is that
we
also?
want to have a civilian wing of it so that we can be recruiting the best cyber talent for our cyber command. Right now, cyber command's kind of a cluster, and pieces of it are in the Army, in the Air Force, and in the Navy, right? So it's kind of this interdepartmental, unorganized sort of a deal that it just is not conducive to succeeding in being the best at cyber, right? And cyber is the primary battlefield of the future. And so if we don't start making a much better effort to recruit the best talent and to have the best cyber operations, we're going to be in big trouble.
Right.
And so moving Space Force out of the Air Force and kind of having the rules be slightly different, so we can be attracting our best cyber samurais into the fray. That's a huge national security imperative moving into the future for the United States.
Okay.
And then the FAA right now, they are just a very antiquated, very wasteful sort of a setup, right? So if you're flying on a commercial jet, right, you want to fly from Phoenix to Chicago. Instead of flying straight from Phoenix to Chicago, you might zigzag, go to Flagstaff, go to Albuquerque, go to, just zigzag across the country.
The standard flight path.
Because you have to fly over these radar beacons. And what the Space Force will allow us to do is control the FAA, or control air traffic control, right? It's not necessarily that we want to have the regulators be in the Space Force, that we want the air traffic control. And we want that to be GPS and space-based so that planes can fly straight to where they need to go. And it's kind of killing two birds, one stone there, right? Because we have been in the process of moving our missile defense to being primarily space-based sensors and direct energy weapons to be shooting those down as opposed to ground-based. That's really expensive and just kind of one of those defense contractor rackets that they've been shaking people down for a long time. So it's with moving our air traffic control to low Earth orbit and moving the internet, right? Right now there's GPS satellites, and the Air Force run those very successfully, and we're going to be rolling out Space Force internet.
Okay, and is that Project Starlink?
That is. So that's been kind of rolling out like quietly,
right?
And we're going to be using that as it's kind of like a mesh network backbone of the internet.
Okay. And is that related to the quantum internet, or we're just talking regular internet that people have today will be available worldwide? Yeah,
so that is just going to be the regular internet for now. It'll have speeds probably as fast as fiber.
Okay.
So it won't be kind of like the HughesNet or the dish. If you have that now, it's kind of slow, kind of lags. It'll be fast enough to game, right? Really low latency, really fast.
Okay.
And we're going to start with the traditional internet.
Okay.
So obviously, when you are undergoing a kind of like big undertaking like this, it takes you a few years to kind of, get your procedures straight and just make sure that you're operating like a well-oiled machine. And just with the leap of technology that the quantum internet is, with the capabilities that we'll gain, just having kind of our feet under us organizationally.
That structure in place.
Yeah, having that first will allow us to have a more successful rollout with the quantum.
Right. Now, once the quantum internet begins to be rolled out, I mean, the technology not only is fantastic, but it could be dangerous if put into the wrong hands. So, as I understand it, you were stating that's why the military must take control of the internet. And people listening out there are probably thinking, why would we want the government to control the internet? And as you famously said, that it's not a question of yes, quantum internet or no quantum internet. It's a question of CIA Team Satan quantum internet versus DIA Team America quantum internet.
Yes, that is absolutely the case. And one of the functionalities of the quantum internet, just for example, of like why this is so important that we keep it safe, is that it will be able to directly interface with your brain. So it'll be able to write a thought in your head. You'll be able to think a thought, save that into the cloud. So if you think about like how your phone works right now, where the tech companies don't care about our privacy or our rights at all,
Right.
in any way, shape, form, or fashion,
Right.
and how they, without our permission, already have the
Violate the-
mics running
yeah.
all the time, right?
Right.
They run those through the ad rev engines, and they try to serve you ads based on conversations you've had offline.
I
right?
think we've all experienced
So
that. Yeah.
so it's pretty creepy and pretty over the line. And if you could imagine that on steroids, right, where you would have the Google ad rev engines could read your mind, could serve you ads straight to your head.
Straight to your head.
It would
without-
be a total
yeah.
nightmare, right? And we really, as President Trump kind of has been demonstrating, right, the tech companies have much more power than most of our politicians. Pretty much all our politicians combined have less power than tech companies. So unless we find some way to rein them in, we're setting ourselves up for a very dystopian future.
That's right,
So
yeah.
that's why the military needs to control the not necessarily like the hosting, right? They just need to control the transmission and make sure that
To
there's
protect it.
there's not tech monopolies doing sinister things that
Right.
are getting out of control really quickly.
That's ultimately one of the only things that we can do to stop the big tech panopticon, if you will, from just completely. Because if people think it's bad now, if they get the technology of the quantum internet in their hands, like you said, they'll be able to beam ads straight into your head. And for those listening out there, that may sound crazy, but I mean, think of it 10 years ago. Did you think you'd have an iPhone in your hand where you can search anything instantly? So the quantum internet is it here yet? That's what I'd like to know. Is it here?
It's here on a military level.
On a military level.
In the commercial market, we're just kind of like in the infancy stages of quantum computing. So it's going to it started a little slow, and it's going to just dramatically ramp up here.
Okay. And are we close to an internet bill of rights to protect our rights on the internet?
Well, that's one of
At least on American soil.
Yeah, so that's one of the primary prerogatives as well of this QAnon movement is to help get out there and make the case for why we need a airtight internet bill of rights, essentially a reaffirmation of our traditional constitutional rights and extending those into the digital world.
Mm-hmm.
Just because right now that's not the case at all. Right now, anyone can censor you for any reason, and they,
Right.
when you're a monopoly, when you're operating at a utility scale, when you're essentially you're facilitating the public square of where we discuss political solutions to our problems, of where we, the primary vehicle for marketing ideas, when they can just arbitrarily control that and shape that, manipulate that,
Right.
it just creates a very dangerous situation for the future moving forward. So kind of the idea there is that the power company can't shut off your power if they don't like your political opinions.
Right. Exactly.
Phone company can't come and shut off your phone if they don't like your political opinions.
Right.
The toll road company can't block your access to the road because they don't like your political opinions. So the tech monopolies can't block your access to the public square or censor it or impede with it in any way just because they don't like your political opinions.
That's right. And you actually, a lot of people give you flack because you were arrested back in March. And one of that, it was really a bogus thing because you stated and your lawyer stated that had you said the exact same thing that you said on the internet on the sidewalk of the company, asking people to call in and express their distaste of or boycott them, just like everyone does today. If you don't like a subject, you can call in to the company. If you did that same thing on the internet, you got in trouble, where if you did it on the sidewalk, you'd be completely fine.
Yes, that is correct. So for the people who don't know, I had a SWAT team raid my house after I made some YouTube videos and asked some followers to help me get some data back from a company, a file sharing service that I had been paying and was hosting some CIA documents that I was showcasing and
Right.
Trying to cast light upon. And
It was your property.
Yeah, exactly. And it was political activism 101. Right? Just, this company wrongs you, can't work it out with them yourself, so you ask your followers in your political movement to send emails and make phone calls to that corporation. And so that's what I did. And when I did that, a couple days later, I woke up to an FBI SWAT team raiding my house and throwing me in jail. So it just shows the degree to which our constitutional rights do not exist when it comes to the internet. And as you had mentioned, my lawyer said if I would have said the exact same thing, told my followers to call and email in the exact same way as I did on my YouTube video, except I would have done that, protesting, standing outside their office on the sidewalk, that there's nothing anyone could have done. That would have been 100% protected. It's just the vagaries of the cybercrime laws that allow the FBI to, fudge details, to embellish, and to charge people with federal crimes for very legitimate political activism.
And because of that, now there was some very interesting evidence that they took from your devices that are now entered officially in the FBI database. So that should be interesting.
Yep. So that is the Amorphous Archive. So this was all over. It's my little fun name for it. But that was the curation of the WikiLeaks emails and some CIA documents from WikiLeaks.
Okay.
That we thought adequately demonstrated the extreme veracity of those. And so those, as a result of all this legal trouble I've been having, are now entered into the official federal court record and will be available for anyone who cares to look to see.
Okay. So just to recap, you are involved in a live action military operation, and you are Q.
That is correct.
You are Austin Steinbart is Q. So let's just get that right out of the way, everybody. And, it's been quite a ride. And, I'm sure we're going to have more interviews and talk more. I just kind of wanted to, just scratch a surface on a few things. Did you want to let anyone know where to find your videos, or where to reach you on social media, or how to learn more about what's going on?
Yeah, for now, I would say just go to my YouTube channel. It's my name, Austin Steinbart. And watch some of my videos. Probably would make the most sense if you watch it from oldest to newest, just because it's kind of like a progression of information that builds. But that would give you a little bit more idea of what we're dealing with out here in Arizona. We'll run an Operation QAnon. All
right. Sounds good. And I know you did state that the last thing you wanted to do was come out publicly, but the DIA and Q Plus made you do it.
That is correct. I was not terribly excited about doxing myself and my entire family and kind of putting myself out there like this.
Right.
But we had reached sort of a plateau in the movement, right, of where we were really good at reaching people who already are kind of like predispositioned to believe in this stuff already, or maybe done some research already. And we want to make this very digestible to like a more mainstream audience, right? So a more mainstream audience, right. There's got to be a source. There's got to be tangible details. There's got to be like, how did you get here? What is your role? Like, what are some of the things you've done? How exactly do you know this? Right.
Right.
So I knew that probably wasn't going to go over well with the rest of the movement, but it's one of those things. We got an operation to conduct, and
that's right.
We hope they'll get on board and come around to doing the mission how we need it. But we gotta make it happen either way. So
and we're making it happen.
Absolutely,
we're making it happen. All right, and so we're getting towards the end here. Is there anything else? One last thing you want to say to everybody listening at home?
Just we got a lot of exciting projects in the works. We started a new media group, a nonprofit, where we are essentially getting a bunch of volunteers. We're devoted to helping get this message out, helping wake up the general population at large, the normies as we like to call them, and laying the public opinion groundwork, like uniting our country and creating this overwhelming democratic mandate we need for some really awesome changes that are long overdue. So I'll have to come back and talk with you at those at a later time.
Absolutely, and, yeah. We could go on and on and on, but we're going to keep it short and sweet for everyone out there because we'll have a lot of topics. What you were going to say? One last thing.
I was just going to say I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you coming.
We'll have to come back sometime soon.
I know a lot of people will be excited to listen to this interview. And if anyone is listening out there, you want to hear the show, it's at thematrixreport.com, thematrixreport.com. You can listen to all the episodes. And Austin, thank you for being here. I always like ending with this little quote here. Please let us embrace the razor's edge, for the beginning of wisdom is knowing how little we know. There are many paths that lead to knowledge. However, there's only one path that leads to truth. And with that, we wish everyone a wonderful day. We're signing off with Austin Steinbart.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
You're listening to The Marcus Cohen Show.
Brought to you by the letter Q and the number 17.